My sister got the inheritance, but I'm stuck paying off my parents' debts, AITA for cutting her off. Hey, Reddit. I never thought I'd be in this position, but here we are. I, 36M, feel like my life's been flipped upside down, and I need to know if I'm in the wrong here. The main people involved in this story are my younger sister, Emily, 32F, and my late parents. Let's start from the beginning. My parents weren't what you'd call financially responsible. They were loving, sure, but when it came to money, they made one bad decision after another. Growing up, Emily and I didn't have much, but our parents were always chasing some dream, new businesses, investments, you name it. They were always hoping that one day, they'd strike it rich. Spoiler alert, they never did. They just ended up with a mountain of debt, and as the older sibling, I ended up being the one who picked up the pieces time and time again. Emily and I were close as kids. Despite the chaos, we stuck together. I practically raised her when our parents were too busy chasing their next big plan. I taught her how to ride a bike, helped her with homework, and made sure she had someone to talk to when things got rough at home. In some ways, I felt more like a parent than a brother. Fast forward to adulthood, and things started to change. Emily was always the golden child in our parents' eyes. She was smart, charming, and she had big dreams of becoming an artist. I took a different path. I went to trade school and became a mechanic, something stable and reliable. I wanted to make sure I had a job that could support me, especially since I knew I couldn't rely on my parents. As the years went by, I ended up being the one who bailed them out more times than I can count. Late mortgage payments, credit card debt, car loans, I helped with it all. I did it because I loved them, and I thought that's what family does. Emily, on the other hand, wasn't as involved. She was off pursuing her art career, living her life. And to be honest, I didn't mind. I wanted her to have a better life than the one we grew up with. But still, a small part of me resented that she never had to shoulder the same burden I did. Our parents passed away last year. It was sudden, both of them, within 6 months of each other. First, my dad had a heart attack, and then my mom, who'd been sick for a while, just didn't have the strength to carry on. It was a rough time, to say the least. I was left to handle most of the arrangements. Emily came home for the funerals, but she didn't stay long. She went back to her life, and I stayed behind to deal with the aftermath. That's when things got messy. My parents didn't leave a will, or at least, not one that anyone would expect. They had debts, a lot of debts. But despite all that, they somehow managed to leave Emily the bulk of whatever assets they had left. They had a small house, which they left to her. They also had some savings, which weren't much, but they went to Emily as well. Me? I got nothing but their debt. Now, let me clarify. When I say I got stuck with their debts, I mean that literally. I was their financial power of attorney before they died, and in that role, I had co-signed several loans with them to help keep things afloat. So, after they passed, those debts became my responsibility. Credit card bills, medical expenses, even their old business loans, all of it landed on my shoulders. Emily, on the other hand, inherited the house, which was fully paid off, and the savings. It was like my parents had rewarded her for staying out of the mess they'd created, while I got punished for trying to help. It didn't seem fair, but I didn't say anything at first. I thought maybe Emily would step up and offer to help me out. After all, we were both grieving, and I assumed she'd want to share the load. But she didn't. Instead, she took the money and the house and moved on with her life. She didn't offer to help me pay off any of the debts, didn't even ask how I was managing. She just kept living her life, and I was stuck drowning in bills. I tried to keep things civil for a while. I didn't want to lose my only sibling, especially not after losing both of our parents. But the resentment started to build. Every time I saw another bill with my name on it, every time I had to dip into my own savings to cover a payment, I felt angrier and angrier. Emily would call me sometimes, acting like nothing was wrong. She'd tell me about her art shows or the trips she was planning, and all I could think about was how easy her life seemed compared to mine. It all came to a head about 3 months ago. I was sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by unpaid bills, when Emily called me to tell me she was renovating the house our parents had left her. She was excited about updating the kitchen and adding an art studio in the back. I snapped. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her how unfair it was that she got everything while I was left with nothing but debt. I asked her why she hadn't offered to help me, even though she knew I was struggling. She was shocked. She said she had no idea I was having such a hard time and that she just assumed I'd be fine. I asked her how she could assume that when she knew I was the one who had co-signed all those loans with our parents. She got defensive. She said it wasn't her fault that our parents had made bad financial decisions and that she shouldn't have to suffer for their mistakes. I told her I wasn't asking her to suffer, I was asking her to help, to share some of the burden, since she was the one who had benefited the most from their estate. But she didn't see it that way. She accused me of being jealous of her success and said that I was trying to make her feel guilty for something that wasn't her fault. That was the last straw. I told her that if she wasn't willing to help me, then I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I said that if she could live her life without considering the people who had supported her, then she wasn't the kind of person I wanted in my life. I hung up the phone, and I haven't spoken to her since. It's been 3 months, and I've been struggling to make ends meet. I've had to take on extra shifts at work, and I've even had to sell some of my own belongings to keep up with the payments. Meanwhile, Emily is living her best life, posting pictures of her newly renovated house on social media. It's hard not to feel bitter about the whole situation. I'm starting to question if I made the right decision by cutting her off. Part of me wonders if I was too harsh, but another part of me feels like I had no other choice. I've always been the one to take care of things, to clean up the messes, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being the responsible one while everyone else gets to live their lives without consequence. So, Reddit, AITA for cutting off my sister after she inherited everything and I was left with the debts. Should I have handled the situation differently, or was I right to stand up for myself? Update 1. Hey, everyone. I didn't expect my post to get so much attention, but I really appreciate all the comments and advice. It's been overwhelming, but also incredibly validating. I wanted to give you all a quick update on what's been happening since I posted. A few days after I posted, I got an unexpected call from Emily. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me I should hear her out. She started off by apologizing. She said she'd been thinking a lot about what I'd said, and she realized that she hadn't been fair to me. She admitted that she'd been so focused on her own life that she hadn't stopped to consider how much I was struggling. She told me she wanted to help. She offered to give me a portion of the money from our parents' savings to help pay off some of the debts. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was a start. She also said she'd be willing to sell the house and split the profits with me if that's what I wanted. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to accept her offer right away, but another part of me felt like it was too little, too late. I told her I needed some time to think about it, and we left it at that. Since then, I've been going back and forth in my mind. On the one hand, it feels good to know that she's finally willing to step up and help. But on the other hand, I can't shake the feeling that she's only doing this because she feels guilty after I cut her off. Shouldn't she have been willing to help from the start, without me having to point it out? I haven't made a decision yet, but I'll keep you all posted on what I decide. Update 2. I've finally made a decision. After thinking it over, I decided to accept Emily's offer. I figured that some help is better than none, and I didn't want to carry this burden alone anymore. We agreed that she would give me a portion of the savings right away and that we'd revisit the idea of selling the house in a few months. But here's the twist. As we were sorting through the finances, I found out something shocking. My parents had set up a secret trust fund for Emily. It turns out, they'd been putting money aside for years, planning to give it to her once she made it as an artist. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to make me feel even more betrayed. When I confronted Emily about it, she seemed just as surprised as I was. She claimed she had no idea about the trust fund and that our parents had never told her. I want to believe her, but at this point, I don't know who to trust anymore. I feel like this whole situation just keeps getting messy, and I don't know how to untangle it. I'm trying to stay focused on paying off the debts and moving forward, but it's hard when I keep discovering more secrets. I'll update again if anything else happens, but for now, I'm just trying to take things one day at a time. Final update. Hey, everyone. I wanted to give you one last update on the situation with Emily and the inheritance. It's been a few months since my last post, and a lot has happened. After discovering the trust fund, I had a long conversation with Emily. She insisted that she hadn't known about it, and after a lot of back and forth, I decided to believe her. We've been working together to untangle our parents' finances, and she's been more involved in helping me with the debts. It's been a slow process, but we're making progress. I've also been working on rebuilding my relationship with Emily. It's not easy, and there are still some lingering feelings of resentment, but I'm trying to let go of the anger and focus on the future. We've started talking more regularly, and I'm hopeful that we can move past this. As for the house, we haven't sold it yet, but we're still considering it. Emily has agreed to split the profits with me if we do, and that feels like a fair compromise. I guess the moral of the story is that family relationships are complicated, especially when money is involved. But at the end of the day, I don't want to lose my only sister over this. I'm still hurt by how everything went down, but I'm trying to focus on healing and moving forward. Thanks to everyone who offered advice and support. This has been a wild ride, but I'm hopeful that things are finally starting to settle down.